My name is Advik Beni. I'm a South African filmmaker currently based in Los Angeles. I'm completing my MFA at Kellogg at the moment, but yeah, I like to make work surrounding people on the fringes back home in South Africa, surrounding grief and trauma of the past. It's called Ilanga Alikho. The English title is The Sun is Missing. So the film is kind of this essayistic, experimental landscape piece about this character who is the son of a professional mourner. So he's considered a character of my generation known as Born Freeze, which is a generation in South Africa born after apartheid, so after 1994. And on this generation, there's kind of this weight of fixing the wrongs of the past, and this kind of weight on the shoulders of my generation and the generations following has kind of led to an apathy and numbness. So this piece is kind of an expression of this kind of these lingering tensions that are still present in South Africa in the form of this character speaking this letter to his mother figure.
I was wondering if you could talk a little bit, because one of the powerful things about your film, or at least for me, it's the image and the rhythm of it. So I was wondering if you could talk about your decision of doing it in analog.
Yeah, for sure. Analog, besides obviously the kind of affect of it, the kind of nostalgic element that's kind of reminiscent of the past. Most of the reason I wanted to use it is obviously we're looking at that kind of transitional space in South African history. So it's kind of going back to a period. But more so than that, for me, it was like a political statement because film 16, Super 8 was primarily used by like the upper class white population who had access to the medium. And even the celluloid itself is not designed for skin of my hue or even darker. So it's like, for me, it's just kind of, I had the ability to now shoot these black and brown bodies on celluloid. So as a kind of just statement of like retaliation, I think it works for this film as well.
I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the process. I mean, because you have a protagonist, there's one character. I don't know how was the process of working with him.
So the protagonist, my friend Kawe Marunsela, I've known him for a while. He was in high school with me, a few years above me. So we played music together and stuff. So we had this kind of relationship like for a while. So I think all processes like that I kind of currently follow is like I really want to kind of break down the kind of traditional forms of making for a kind of more inclusive, holistic process that involves anyone within different aspects of the filmmaking process. So although Awe is the performer, he's also the writer. We wrote the poem together after this kind of intermingling of working on anything. I can jump in to the sound thing. He'll come to the sound. We'll write together and kind of like not creating the streamlined process to making as much, just because I think we both think, but I'll speak for myself, that that doesn't represent like a South African sensibility of like creating films. So it's like searching for a filmmaking process that is indicative of a South African landscape, which for me kind of takes a lot from the oral traditions of South Africa and KZN where I'm from. So I think the process was indicative of that kind of mutability and that ability to be open to things shifting and changing and kind of having this idea or ideology or a theme and letting the film kind of take its own form as you start it off, not having this kind of stringent result or process. Yeah.
Yeah. Are you planning to continue working on these topics related to South Africa?
Yeah, definitely. I've been working, just came back from South Africa about a few weeks ago for 2 months. I was there kind of shooting the first part of what I imagined to be a feature, but we'll see how it goes. But yeah, so it's definitely this new film's kind of dealing with this kind of still these ideas of grief and the weird violence that is still lingering on between actually the previously disenfranchised community. So it's like even though the colonizer has left, those kind of affects and like those systems are still very much there, and it's starting to show in the last 2 years in these kind of violent protests and such. So this film's kind of it's different to this last film that I made, but it's definitely this through line of themes that I'm like so focused on over my past few years.
changing a little bit of the topic, but I would like to ask you about your film school.
Yeah, so I've spent well, I'm almost at the end of my time at CalArts. I would have been done, but I took a semester off. But yeah, for me, the greatest thing I've kind of taken from CalArts is kind of this, because CalArts is a film school which has kind of an image held to it already of what type of work they come up with. So the people who go, they all have that kind of idea in the back of their mind when they apply and when they go there. So I think the greatest thing that I got from my CalArts experience is the community of filmmakers from around the world. It's such a diverse kind of array, and it really forces you to look at the kind of multiplicity and different perspectives on anything you make. And so for me, that's been the most invaluable kind of resource. And of course, for my work, because I'm still focusing on kind of analog media because of those ties in, like the access that CalArts has to those kind of resources, which of course are dwindling worldwide. But like for me back home, there's no way like I could have shot film. Like there's no access to that kind of medium, for better or worse. But yeah, so that's been something. I think the access which was able to have back home, and just the incredible community of people.
That's great. And the final question is, what does cinema mean for you?
That's a tough question, but I think similar to what I was saying to my process of allowing it to become something else. For me, cinema, like as strange as this is gonna sound, like it doesn't have to be a film as a final product. Like cinema is kind of the process of making. It's kind of this tangibility of being in a community, being in a space, having interactions, and allowing, for me, that oral sensibility of mutability. So it's allowing those processes to kind of take charge and not being like just like letting it be. But I think in that process of cinema, there's this more tangible affect to a community and its people. So for me, that's what makes cinema. Cinema is the process of making.